Episode 1394, property appraisals. Are agents telling them the truth? Stay tuned. I don't like that mouse pad.
I'll try it again.
Welcome to Morning
God,
Minute.
this is juicy.
Yes. Are property appraisals scams helpful? Pros and cons. We're going to look at it from the property owner's point of view, but also we'll chuck in a little bit of the agent's point of view. Mark, what's your initial thought when you hear property appraisals from the owner's point of view?
Helpful, awesome, good until they're not. And then it's almost like I wish I could tell people that are getting their appraisals all across Sydney, all across Australia, saying, just watch out for these things. So generally they're innocent, they're helpful, 99% of the time it's all good. But then there's the 1%er where the clients go, I didn't know I should have asked that. I didn't know I could have done that. So there's a couple of things here today we're going to talk about that when you do get your agent through for a rental appraisal, for a sales appraisal, things to say, things not to do. And, generally 99.9% of the time you're fine. It's just that 0.1% where I see stuff and I'm like, oh no, you fell for that. You fell for that one.
Yeah, the hardest thing to hear is, especially if you go in for a listing appraisal, especially if something's already been on the market, and let's just say your pricing is very different to what they were initially told, and the owner goes, I wouldn't have done this if that was the case. And you can imagine on a residential sale, commercial sale, just to get the listing live, sometimes people are decluttering, painting, doing mini renovations before they go to market, and most of all spending thousands of dollars. So that could be that's definitely the hardest thing to hear. So
absolutely.
Let's start with, what's the advantages of an owner knowing the property price? What can they do with it?
Oh, look, you're going to get to meet a great agent which knows a shitload of stuff about their area and pricing and property and strategy. You're going to get opposite some really experienced people that really know their shit, and that's really going to help you with your process. That's cool. It's just the parts that I'm worried about that are not cool when they don't get opposite a great agent.
Well, and your risk of not getting opposite a great agent is heightened if you're only interviewing agents to sell your property potentially just before you're looking to sell. And what I mean by that, let's say if you're thinking to sell in 3 years' time, and if you start to build relationships with a couple key agents in your area, you may pick out 5 agents 3 years in advance, get them all in for an appraisal, and then you can evaluate how they act in that appraisal and for the years to come. Are they staying in contact? Are they staying in contact with you? Are they helpful? Yeah. Because then that can give you a bit of a gauge. Yeah. What are they going to be like during the campaign? And not only what are they like, are they still in the industry in 3 years' time? Real estate is one of the biggest dropout ratios in any industry. So just to know they've got that longevity, because we know a lot of time agents who are new to the industry will claim office sales that may not be their sales, but are office sales, which is quite common.
Yep. So I think probably the number one thing would be to get a good cross section, what you just mentioned, of agents. So rather than getting one, signing with one, you don't know what the metrics are. Is that normal? Is that not? Get a good 3-4 agents. I love seeing, I was talking to a client who's bought a property from me off the plan, and she's a little bit helpless at the moment. She's up in the Central Coast, one hit wonder, and she's been with the agent for 7 months, and she signed with the first agent that walked through her door. And I said to her, and she's like, she honestly asked what to do, and I'm like, you got to get 3. You got to get 3 quotes now. these agents, and she said, well, who do I call? And I'm like, see who's doing volume in your area, see who's selling in your area. She's like, how do I do that? I'm like, go on to realestate.com, have a look at your price range and see who's done the most amount of transactions, the top 1, 2, and 3 agents. And she's like, oh, okay. So yeah, simple stuff for
On
us, but
one
not for everyone.
on one hand, it's harder than it's ever been to find that agent, and on the other hand, it is the easiest if you know what to look for. What I mean by
Yep.
hardest is with technology these days, agents can make it look like they're busy. They can create the great website. They can just look like they're the best agent in the world. But so it can get quite confusing for a homeowner who's not familiar with the lingo, the awards, or the bread and butter. And it can be just as easy because, you can just go realestate.com and really pinpoint it. But once again, sometimes they've got 2 or 3 agents on the ad, and you're like, well, who actually did the deal and who was there for the ride? So it can be tricky.
And I think another thing, the first, people really don't know what to ask when they're in an appraisal. Use ChatGPT. Just tell it to, give you a list of what to ask your realtor or your agent. But like, to give you an idea, the biggest thing I see, which is baiting with price, and people just, you often you can't handle the truth. You don't want the truth. So you may think it's worth this amount, and you tell the real estate agents it's worth that. That's what you think. It's really hard for them to disagree with you on the first moment they've met you. So often agents are actually just agreeing with your price, which is the wrong thing to do. Data doesn't lie. I think you need to ask them for substantiation on the prices they're giving you for your home, because if you're misled on price, if that gives you a bum to your steer on price, you could be wasting 10 grand of your money and 4 months of your time and a whole lot of pain. So pricing is really, really important.
Oh, I've had 2 shocking examples come to mind where people's retirements have been affected on the pricing. One was they used the auto pricing, I think, from Combank. There's an address you can type in. You can, I think Commonwealth Bank have a system, put an address in. Now, this was a commercial office. Put the address in. Those systems don't really know the difference between commercial or residential. So that system's telling him his property is worth $1.5 million when it was worth 300 grand. And he almost cried in front of me because he's like, I was going to retire on this. This was what I thought my retirement was. I've used this for the last few years.
Yeah.
And that's a shocker.
It's a big bank, you think, wow, these guys know what they're talking about. They must, but they're only as good as the data they're given.
Yeah. And another one was similar, not as drastic, but it was there because a lot of people, especially in Australia, all their money is tied up in their house. So it was one where they thought it was 3 million. They even had agent letters. Yep, 3 million, 3 million. But I know sometimes what it's like where an owner just asks for a 1-page appraisal for their bank, or they just need it for whatever reason, and they're like, put it as high as you can. And if you do that 3 or 4 years consecutive, you're well above the market. And from the agent's point of view, they may not be as careful with their due diligence because you're not actually selling, and sort of where's the harm in it? So there can be the pros and cons of getting too many appraisals and not asking the right. I don't think you get too many, but if you don't ask the right questions, then you can really dig yourself a hole.
And also, I think sometimes people signing up to an agent, sometimes people sign up to an agent for, I've seen 6 months, 9 months on an agency agreement, which means you cannot use any other agent. So some people have they've signed up with an agent for 6 months. They're not happy after 2 or 3 months. They've got no other alternative but to stick with the agent. So I think a really important thing when getting an appraisal from agents and when you're is knowing how long the agreement they want is for, and you've got to be real honest with these guys and say, look, in case we don't sell, in case we want to use someone else. When getting an appraisal, there's some really good home truths here, guys, that you got to stick to. Otherwise, it's a setup for potential pain. You've got to be careful.
Yeah, and then as Lisa says, you've got commissions that come into play. So sometimes they can make it worse by telling you the price you want to hear. Then they look appealing with the commission, and it's a bit of a trap owners fall into, where they just think, oh, they're going to get me the highest price and they're going to be the cheapest, equals more money in my bank account. And quite often that ratio equals no money in your bank account. So it's almost like any industry or service where your Louis Vuitton bag, the highest quality, the highest price, or think of it like cars. You've got those level of industries when it comes to fees, very similar to cars. You're always going to have the top agents, which are necessarily some of the most expensive, but not always. Sometimes it's quite from reasonable to most expensive. And then you've got sometimes the less active agents. Sometimes the newer agents can be at that lower percentage, and that then it can be almost a luck of the draw. Sometimes a fresh agent can come in, they get 2 active buyers, and they do get a great price, and it does go well. Sometimes with that agent, the journeyman who's been doing it a long time, doesn't get consistent sales, but knows enough that when 2 buyers are there, they can make it happen. But it's when things go wrong, that when there aren't 2 buyers, there's only 1, or there's no buyers. What do you do there? So fortunate, some owners don't get stuck when they sort of go that who tells me the highest price and offers me the lowest fee ratio. But you almost need that plan B if you do go down that path of not having an agreement for 6 months, or I think the normal REI, New South Wales agreement's quite handy, where it's only sort of 60, 90 days. So it does give you a bit of that out. But
And I
also,
think when people, Michael, are asking about, and for people that don't know, when you're asking an agent over for an appraisal, it's a bit of a segue to the whole shebang. You know what I mean? So even though the question is, I want to know what my property's worth, the actual answer that comes out on that is quite detailed. So your agent will talk about that. They'll talk about comparisons. They'll talk about what it will take to sell a marketing strategy. They'll talk about marketing dollars. They'll talk about duration, how long to be on the market, auction, not auction. There's a lot of things. So even though you're saying, I just want an appraisal, just want a price, there's a lot more. And they're the home truths today that we wanted to talk about.
Yep. And just like school teachers, we're not all the same. There's some really good teachers that you learn from, and there's some terrible ones.
Well said.
So
well said.
I think that's the best analogy to let people know it does make a difference who you pick to sell your home and appraise your home.
Yeah, that experience. And I love what Lisa always says it. It's how someone makes you feel. So you can go through the same process and you feel an absolute, it was just an awesome experience, or you can go through that and just think, oh my God, I'll never do that again, particularly with that person. So I think when you're in a appraisal, appraisal of price, sure, but I think you're almost appraising the agent as well. You're thinking, are we gonna dance,
Exactly, as Lisa just says, be unforgettable. All right, Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good morning.
Have a good morning. Thank you, Bird. See ya.